are in Scotland, a place that Roger and I had always planned to come back together to film another video. Unfortunately, for me, the Lord had other plans for Roger, but fortunately for him, he is in a place far more beautiful than this. Although we can't imagine it, I look around at the handiwork of God here. It is truly awesome. Then I think about what Roger must be experiencing, and this can't even compare to the beauty that we see here. Many of you may know Roger Bennett, the pianist, Roger the songwriter, the singer, the MC, even the comedian. But I'd like to share with you a few things about Roger, my husband, Roger the father, the son, the friend. He was all of those things. And I might say, because I am a little biased, he was very good at everything that he did. Although this video is in a sense a tribute to the life of Roger Bennett, it's not solely made for this purpose. It's about leaving part of his legacy behind in his music and the places that he loved and the people that he loved to visit with, people that he loved to see, and his heart, his spirit about the music that he played. As a child, Roger loved to play the piano. He just didn't care that much about taking lessons. Although he loved his piano teacher, Miss Alita, he figured out early on that if he could get her to play the piece, then he could sit down and repeat it. And after a few weeks, Miss Alita caught on to that and told his mother that she didn't think there was anything that she could do for him anymore.
This young man needs no introduction.
I met Roger in the fall of 1990, and I was living in Houston, Texas, singing with a group at the time. Glenn Payne called me on the phone and said, "I need you to come try out for the Cathedrals." And I immediately went, and I was to meet them at a Hilton hotel. And when I got there, I literally met them in their room at the Hilton. And as I started to sing for my audition, Roger, of course, was playing the piano. I'm just as nervous as I can be, and I look up, and my eyes connect with Roger's. And he just looks at me and smiles, winks, nods, just affirmation. "You're doing good, you're doing fine, relax, you're doing great, I like what I'm hearing." And that started our 18-year friendship.
When George and Glenn came to us on the bus and told us that they were going to sing for another year, basically to tell everybody goodbye and thank you and that they loved you. And I remember they were here last year, and they did that all across the country. And they told us they were going to do that 12 months from that day. And so after that conversation, they left the bus and left me and Roger there by ourselves. And Roger grabbed me and took me to the back of the bus. And he said, "Scott, what in the world are we going to do?" I said, "Well, Roger, I mean, we got to come up with something. We both love quartet music. You know, maybe we should think about, putting together a group and just sticking together. We're best friends." And Roger confessed to me that night that he's never really wanted to do anything else. Is this accurate to say you've never really wanted to do anything else except what you're doing, playing, writing, and singing Southern gospel music? I told Roger that night that I knew that I was living the desire of my heart. I've never wanted to do anything else. We both agreed that night that neither one of us wanted to work.
I am against it.
That's right.
I tried it a day and a half and hated it. I just couldn't stand it.
You tried work a day and a half?
A day and a half, yeah, I did. That's the only job I ever had.
What'd you do?
I'm from Strawberry, Arkansas,
Right.
I worked at the Strawberry Municipal Zoo for a day and a half.
Strawberry has a zoo?
Well, it did have. It wasn't like I quit or anything. They had to shut it down. Yes, everybody got laid off.
What happened?
Well, the chicken died. Is what happened.
Roger said that he would be out mowing his yard in Strawberry, Arkansas, and have dreams of this big, huge bus coming around the corner saying, "Hey, kid, we need a piano player. Can you come with us?" One evening, the Cathedrals were appearing at a concert in Jonesboro, Arkansas. 3 of the group members of the Cathedrals had just given their notice that they were leaving, and George and Glenn were fixing to be without a piano player. The promoter of that concert came to George and Glenn and said, "There's this kid playing with the Wayfaring Singers, and I think you might need to stand back and listen to him." So while the singers were on the stage, George and Glenn were standing in the back of the auditorium listening to him. And after they sang, they came up to Roger and said, "Hey, kid, would you like to audition for us?" And he said, "Sure, I would." So after the concert, they kind of gathered around the piano, and he played for them. They liked him, and they said, "How would you like a job?" Well, he was just bowled over, of course. This was in November, and he said, "Well, I just started this semester at Arkansas State University. Can I finish the semester out? I've got tests next week." And they said, "No, if you want the job, you have to be with us next week." And he says he sat out in the parking lot in the car with his mom and dad for an hour and a half or 2 hours, and they discussed it and cried over it and listed the pros and cons, but in the end, his dad said, "Roger, you don't want to miss an opportunity." And the next week, he had his suitcase packed and flew to Akron, Ohio, where Glenn picked him up, took him out to Bob Evans' restaurant, and then they rehearsed that night, got on the bus later on, and that was the start of his career, 27 years in gospel music.
We just hit it off. Again, he was the one in the group that I gravitated toward. Certainly all the other guys were friendly as well. None of the guys didn't treat me nice, but Roger was the one that really seemed to go out of his way to make sure I was comfortable, to make sure I understood what was expected of me. He kind of taught me the ways of the road life. He taught me the cathedral way. And, every organization kind of has their own code and kind of how they do things. And Roger was the one that always made sure I understood everything.
Can we take a rain check? Because this has 3 verses on it. I don't think I can remember the verses.
No, you
I
can
gotta
do
sing
it.
it all.
It doesn't matter. They want to hear the song.
We shouldn't rehearse. It's not professional. No,
I'm telling
we shouldn't.
you. Look.
Roger, we ought not to listen. I'll do it.
sitting in Alloway beneath the famous Brigadoon. Alloway is the birthplace of Robert Burns, the Bard of Scotland, whom some may say is the most romantic poet in the world. He made famous the Brigadoon in his poem Tam O'Shanter. In America, we might remember Brigadoon from the musical of the same name. But here in the gardens below the bridge, I'm just sitting and admiring the beauty that God has put all around us.
One of my dad's favorite places to visit in Scotland and Northern Ireland was this place in Northern Ireland called Inchabbee. When you go there, it's just such a peaceful place. I mean, it's a feeling like unlike anything you felt anywhere else, and Dad really picked up on that, and he would just walk around the grounds for, I'm sure he could have spent hours there, you know, just enjoying the setting and the peaceful feeling it gave him. And I've enjoyed that too with him.
A few years ago, my dad visited a very special place in Northern Ireland. It's called Inchabbee, and it was one of his favorite places here. This is what he wrote about it. Inchabbee is the remains of an 11th century church. Debbie, the kids, and I were totally blown away by what we saw. As we walked into the green clearing, the church seemed to rise up in front of us. It's mostly gone now, but what is left is certainly the view of a lifetime. The stone walls that held 3 enormous stained glass windows still stand proudly in the clearing. Even after nearly 1,000 years, it still looks like a church. I immediately bowed my head and thanked God for his enduring love and grace. In that ancient place, his sweet Holy Spirit still moved. What a great reminder that his faithfulness is indeed great.
In his online journal, Roger wrote, "I love the phrase in the Bible that says, 'Morning by morning, his mercies are new.' Inexhaustible grace. I found it to be true in the night, midnight by midnight, if you will. I think we all need to be reminded that God neither slumbers nor does he sleep." Throughout Roger's 11-and-a-half-year journey with cancer, we learned so much about God's grace in our life. If you had asked me before any of this started what grace was, I might have quoted you the little saying that I learned in Sunday school. Grace means God's riches at Christ's expense. And that's probably about all I thought about grace. The grace that we found that we got when Roger was diagnosed with cancer and in the years following is grace that is not explainable unless you need it. The Bible talks about grace being new every morning, and that is true. Grace for the moment.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. I've heard that great old song all my life, and I really thought that I knew what grace was. I didn't have a clue. You see, at the time of this recording, I'm in the biggest battle of my life. The foe I'm facing is one that you can't see, though. I'm fighting leukemia. In August of 1995, I was told that the lumps in my neck were caused by CLL, chronic lymphocytic leukemia. That day is etched forever in my memory because it was not only the beginning of my biggest battle, but it was the beginning of my wonderful journey into grace. At that moment when I knew that things were out of my hands, I found that I was firmly in God's hands. His grace has allowed me to move forward in victory. In the dark, lonely times when I've been almost convinced to give up, God's grace has urged me on. The phone would ring with a friend on the line just to say hi, or I'd open a card that would make me laugh. But many times it's just been me and the Father in the garden alone. Whatever the circumstances, I've found without fail that His grace is more than sufficient. So you can understand why this great old song has become even more special to me. Through many dangers, toils, and snares I have already come. His grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. Whatever you're facing, it may not be cancer, it could be anything. But if it's an enemy that seems undefeatable, take it from one who knows firsthand. His grace, God's grace, will lead you home.
I wish everyone could have known Roger as the patient. He was not a complainer. He was always happy, making people laugh, making people smile. And he was never too ill, no matter how bad he felt himself. He was never too ill to go to other people and give them a word of encouragement or make them laugh or tell a Roger story. As we all know, he had plenty.
His name is Glenn Dustin. He is from West Monroe, Louisiana. And got some people that's heard of West Monroe. That's about the only good thing that's ever come out of West Monroe. Of course, this coming from the man from Arkansas. Our gift to the nation for the last 8 years. Glenn is 31 years old. He's just the greatest young bass singer we've heard in so many years. He is doing an incredible job with us. Now, he looks really good. If the camera zooms in on him, you're going to see he's a nice-looking young man, nice smile there, and good, expensive suit he's got on that we bought for him, brand new cowboy boots we didn't buy. But you know what? Glenn hadn't traveled much before he joined Legacy 5. He's a country boy, and there's nothing wrong with that. But one of the funnier stories that I've heard his folks tell me about him that's very true, you've got to know. Glenn went to Washington, D.C. when he was in high school to sing for President Ronald Reagan. They took the whole choir, went to Washington, and Glenn was all excited, but he'd never traveled. His choir director told him, said, guys, don't take cash up there to that big city. Somebody could knock you in the head, steal your money, it'd be gone, that'd be it. You need to take traveler's checks. Well, the problem was Cuz didn't know what a traveler's check was.
No idea.
He asked the teacher, and she said, well, go to the bank and they'll tell you. Well, he's a Baptist boy. He had on his Bethel Baptist Church. softball t-shirt. Walked into the bank that afternoon, slapped his money down on the counter and said, "I'd like me some traveler checks, please." The lady said, "What denomination?" Einstein said, "Southern Baptist."
Throughout this tribute, we'd like to share with you a few writings from Roger's journal. Some are very personal to him. Others may not apply so much to him as to your own life, and after all, that was the purpose of his writing. I'm still amazed at God's faithfulness to me. When I have small faith, His strength is mighty. There have been times during the last 10+ years that I had given up on myself, but He never did. To be honest about the situation, we're in the midst of some heavy lifting right now. Some days our spirits are low. Several of our friends have lost their battle with cancer, and with each passing, a small chink will appear in our armor. Needing renewal, yet unable to renew ourselves, we once again fall before the Father, exhausted and sad, and once again He gives us peace beyond our understanding. I depend on my Heavenly Father's strength. He's proven faithful at every crossroads, and even if I don't get the news that I expect, He has grace and joy for me in the toughest of times. I've learned that my sweetest time of the day is when I'm having my prayer time. The events that seemed so important a couple of hours prior seem hardly worth the worry while relaxing in His presence, making my petitions known, or maybe just listening for His leading. That's the time that I finally understand the phrase, "The things of this earth will grow strangely dim in the light of His glory and grace." I've had to trust a plan that is bigger than me, and in trusting the plan, I've become better at trusting the planner. He's proven faithful. Roger also wrote once, "I know a little bit about blood, having been through 3 bone marrow transplants. They tell me that my donor cells are doing well, and I'm thrilled with that. But on a much larger scale, I had a transplant when I was 9 that is never in danger of failing. I exchanged my eternity for His eternity when I made Him Lord of my life. My sin was traded for His perfection, my weakness for His strength, my sadness for His joy. Undeserving, yet given a place at His table. What grace has been extended." Yet again, I'm reminded of the faithfulness of God. The idea that we can glory in our weaknesses because of His strength is liberating. I'm so blessed to have the medical care that I'm receiving and the friends who have rallied to our side. However, the most important component in this valley is the grace and faithfulness of God. There are many unknowns in this time of my life, but the bedrock statement that I count on is, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That never changes. In Christ alone, I'm blessed and in His grip.
One of my favorite memories of my dad, he has a '66 Mustang convertible that he actually bought from Scott Fowler, and he's had it for a few years. He got it fixed up real nice, and he had a good time fixing that up. And we would go on drives on a nice spring or summer day, just out back roads in the country. What made it special is that it was just a time for us to be together and talk. Sometimes we would bring our cameras, since we were both interested in photography, and just take pictures of whatever we felt like. It was just a good time to be together.
The day that Roger called me on the phone and said, I've got to have a bone marrow transplant, and it has to be approved by the insurance. And to make a long story short, the insurance made the decision that they were not going to pay for the transplant.
I wish everyone could have known Roger, the patient. He never wanted to be known as Cancer Boy, and he never was. He never used his illness to gain any sympathy or any favors. And yet, through it all, people who observed him with this illness learned a lot about the character of who Roger Bennett was.
He had always been in situations where he was the one helping, and he was the one giving of himself, of his time, of his encouragement, and even of his resources financially. He was always the one that was able and willing and capable of giving. And then at a time in his life when he needed to be the recipient of that, a lot of folks came to his aid and helped him, and I believe that was simply because of the groundwork that he and Debbie, frankly, had laid for years and years as being faithful givers and always thinking of others. And when he needed the help the most, he had thousands of people that literally gave to a fund that would help him meet all of his financial needs medically.
We're now in St. Andrews, a city that is quite diverse. It's probably best known as the home of world golf. In fact, I'm standing in front of the 18th green of the world-famous Old Course. What a lot of people don't know, however, is that St. Andrews is a city that is rich in Christian heritage. We're at St. Andrews University, and at a spot not far from here, the first martyr of the Scottish Reformation was burned at the stake. His name was Patrick Hamilton. He was only 24 years old at the time. And I remember coming here with Roger and standing near that very spot. And he looked down at it, and he was weeping, big tears coming from his eyes, and he said, "I don't count myself worthy to be named in the same ranks of Christians who gave their lives for Christ." But the reality is, were it not for those first Christian martyrs, we wouldn't have the freedom today to live our lives openly worshiping the God that we love. We may never be called upon to give our lives physically, to be killed for our beliefs in Christ, but we are called upon daily to give our bodies as a living sacrifice, to stand up and tell the world that Jesus does love us. Now, throughout Roger's long journey with cancer, he told people often that he wouldn't trade cancer for anything. And if they looked at him funny, he'd go on to explain that he found a closer walk with God through all of this time than he ever had before. And if it meant having cancer to give him that closer walk, he'd sure take the cancer any day. And I'd have to agree with him. It was a very difficult journey, one that we would not have chosen to walk together. But in that walk, we found a closer walk with God, and ultimately that's what we want here on earth. I'm so proud of the man that Roger Bennett was, and my prayer is that my daughter, Chelsea, and my son, Jordan, will turn out to be even half the person that he was.
Sing now. Sing victory in Jesus now.
Softly and tenderly, Jesus is calling, calling for you and for me. See on the portals, he's waiting and watching, watching for you and for me. Come home, ye who are weary, come home. Earnestly, tenderly, Jesus is calling, calling, O sinner, come home.
I found that the older I get, the less I really know. I'm just being honest with you, you know. A lot of people think that with age comes a mantle of wisdom, and that's not necessarily the case. I am just as confused and muddled at 41 as I was at 21, you know. But I can tell you what I have learned. I have learned that Jesus is faithful. I have learned that God is sovereign. And I have learned that nothing takes him by surprise.
Roger's favorite Bible verse, which he took to heart, and especially over these last years, was 2 Corinthians 4:16 through 18. For which cause we faint not. But though our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory, while we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. I know that I would like to try to live up to the legacy that Roger left behind. But I'm not trying to just live up to Roger's legacy. Roger was just an example of the way that Jesus can work in our lives. I'm trying to live to be the person that Jesus Christ wants me to be. I just had a really good example in Roger.
You may think that your part in the kingdom might be pretty small. You don't travel around in a big bus, and you don't preach before millions of people on TV, and maybe you don't have any of the contacts that you think you would need to have to do a big job in God's kingdom. I got news for you. That's what the world calls a big job. What God calls a big job is being faithful in the little things. The everyday heroes are what's important to the kingdom.
Here in the Trossachs, this is Rob Roy country. But more than that, it's a favorite tourist spot because of the crystal clear waters, the trees, and the mountains that come straight down to the loch. It truly is beautiful country. I think the hymn writer had it right when he said, "When peace like a river." I've always found rest and relaxation listening to the sound of water. In fact, Roger and I used to go a lot of places near water just so that we could rest. But it reminds me of the verse in the Bible when Jesus told us that even though he was going to go away and leave us, he was going to leave peace with us. And it would not be peace like the world knew, but peace that only he could give. And that's the only way I can explain the peace that I feel in the circumstances in my life. I feel such peace knowing that Roger is in heaven and has finally reached his reward. And it's nothing that I could feel on my own. I know it's the peace that God has given me. And I'd like to just encourage you that if you have burdens in your life, if you have trouble, if you have a troubled soul, give your burdens over to the Lord and see the peace that he can give you. And then you will truly know it is well with your soul. Why is it that God, who is light, who created light, does so much of His work in the dark? The answer? Because that's where we are. Our weakness is more pronounced in the darkness, and we feel so alone in our darkness. But God is not intimidated by the dark. He invades it and speaks to us there. If you choose to walk by faith and not by sight, turning instead to what is right, following His plan, feeling His presence, and listening for that whisper in the night, and it will be a life well spent, a life that leaves a trail of lives that will be touched forever.
I am waiting for His whisper in the night. I'm depending on His word to give me light. I'm expecting a victory in this fight. I am listening for what God whispers in the night. I am waiting for His whisper in the night. I'm depending on His word to give me light. I'm expecting a victory in this fight. I am listening for what God whispers in the night. In the midst of tribulation, it seems the darkness has no end. When my light of faith is fragile, like a candle in the wind. All alone, though I'm surrounded by my friends and family near, it's your strong voice that comforts me, your voice that says I'm near. I am waiting for His whisper in the night. I'm depending on His word to give me light. I'm expecting a victory in this fight. I am listening for what God whispers in the night. If you feel like you prayed your last prayer, pray on. Believe He's going to be there in your midnight hour. Lord, in your word I've found my hope, rest from my affliction, evidence of faithfulness, abiding love and grace. It is in this lonely midnight that I've found my greatest treasure, the assurance that you hear me, Lord, and that you see me in this place. I am waiting for His whisper in the night. I'm depending, Lord, I'm depending on your word, on His word to give me light. I'm expecting, Lord, I'm expecting a great victory in this fight. This fight, I am listening. Oh Lord, we listen for your whisper. Always listening for what God whispers in the night.
God bless you. Good night. Thank you so much.